It's officially been an entire year since we first got our hands on the Xbox Series X consoles. And with that year, we got some great games that kicked off the generation the right way. We got games that showed just how raw some of these consoles came in. We also got some of the best gaming experiences we've ever had in a very, very long time. All I can say is that the Series X generation kicked its first year off with a bang, but also in ways we can see much needed improvements. Let's get into everything I think is worth noting about the console, and if after a year of being out, is this the best console that Xbox has ever made? Let's get into this. Hey, what's up everyone? Thanks for stopping by and checking out the video. Remember to hit that subscribe button and that like button. The support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to be notified on future content, make sure to hit that small little bell icon. It helps out the channel a lot. And if you want to go that extra mile to support the channel, hit that join button. It's really appreciated. Okay, so let's get into the Xbox Series X. In this video, I want to get into so many aspects that people should know about the console, but also talk about improvements that weren't on the console when it launched. There's a lot to cover here, but I have to say, it's pretty great to look back over the year and see what games, features, and of course technology that's gone into this next generation console. But I also want to get into the games and what developers across the gaming world have done with this new hardware that we have. Sometimes we get games that are amazing on the console, yet others still need to be optimized. So let's get into the things I feel make this console a true next generation experience. The first thing we have to talk about is obviously the hardware. What else can we say about this console? For a very, very long time, people speculated that the heat might be an issue, especially with all the crazy amount of performance that we would get from this console. For it to be compacted into this small form factor, it was going to be insane. And I have to admit, the Series X does get hot, or does warm up your room if you're playing a demanding game. Yet it's nowhere near the heat output some people were speculating back when the consoles first launched. In fact, I would say it's a very cool and quiet piece of hardware that you barely notice is even on. Much like the Xbox One X and the Xbox One console, the Series X is very, very quiet to the point you forget that you're even playing on a console because you don't hear it. I don't ever think about the noise this thing outputs because there isn't very much of it. But I do have to admit one thing. This thing is far, far closer to a PC than most people would admit. This console stays upright vertically for me, and I almost feel like the base, which isn't removable, is much like a PC. And let's be real, the amount of performance this thing puts out is going to perform very close to a lot of people's PCs that are out there right now. There are two USB ports at the rear of the console along with an Ethernet port. Oh, and there's also the storage expansion slot, which I have to say is very easy to use. Yet it is pricey, I will admit that, but you can't beat plugging in a 1TB or 2TB drive right into your console and get that same exact SSD performance as the internal drive, which I have to say the 1TB drive in the Series X isn't enough. Trust me, you'll want to get an expansion card if you play more than 2 or 3 or 4 games at a time. I'm talking Call of Duty and a bunch of other high-performing games, especially now that some games reach over 100 gigabytes of space like Forza Horizon 5 and Gears 5 do. That's 200 plus gigabytes of data taken up just by those two games. But I do have to say one thing about this console, which is the SSD. As someone that's had an SSD hard drive on their PC for quite some time, I'm extremely impressed with the console's load times and storage. You get into games far faster than you usually did on the Xbox One and the PS4 consoles, and of course you would. SSD was a huge selling point for both of these consoles, and the internal hard drive delivers. And so does the expansion card, which I have to say most people should get, because you will want those high-performing load times in pretty much every single game you play. Long gone are the wait times to jump into a game or fast travel across a map. Those are basically gone with this console. So it's pretty much life-changing, and you just can't go back to the old way of loading games. But let me round out the hardware on the console. I have to say that you should really invest in a new controller, because they do have a share button and also a USB-C plug-in. I know that sounds minor, but for me it's a huge difference because I can pretty much switch my USB connections on all my current devices, and it just makes it easy to switch from my PC to my console with one single wire. Also, make sure you have an HDMI 2.1 connection to the console and the TV you play on. The HDMI comes with the console, but some people tend to switch it out and move things around. Trust me, keep the HDMI 2.1 because it will get you the best performance on your games. Some people don't know this, but most HDMI 2.1 wires that are longer than 6 feet tend to only output 60 FPS at like 1440p or even lower. So make sure you stick with the HDMI 2.1 that was provided by the console, or buy a better one that fits your needs, but make sure you do the research. And also regarding the controller, the input lag is insane on there. It's almost non-existent. They really changed the technology in the controller to be coinciding with what the console can do, and I have to say it's great, and I can't go back to the older controllers to see how things are. I bring this up because I want the best performance for my games. Which brings me to the next topic, optimize games in the 60 to 120 Hz modes that we can get with this console. What's the point of having a 12TB console with a powerhouse CPU if games don't use all that power? Well, I'm glad to say that pretty much every single first-party Xbox game utilizes the Series X with some of the best upgrades I've ever seen. Gears 5 Hivebusters to this day is one of the best-looking games I've seen on the console. The Series X knocks this game out with the power it runs, and it runs it flawlessly. Fallout 4 got a massive 60 FPS boost, which makes the game almost completely different. Destiny 2 players got a massive jump in performance that will have them look at the PC players and actually compete in performance with them. These improvements are truly insane to see, especially since a lot of the Xbox first-party games take advantage of the system. I mean, if Xbox didn't boost their own games on the console, then what was the point of doing this? It wouldn't make much sense if they didn't. So we see Forza Horizon 4 look insane. Sea of Thieves get a 60 FPS mode and enhancements, and to round it all out, we see Forza Horizon 5 that just came out 1 year after the release of this console, and it truly is the best looking game I've ever seen on the consoles, no matter what. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic either. The game is stunning. That covers a lot of the first-party Xbox games. So let's go into the third-party optimization. This is something that could use some improvements on. Don't get me wrong, Warzone, Dirt 5, and a bunch of older games have great enhancements on the console, and it's something that's impressive. But there's also games like Cyberpunk 2077 that haven't had anything to do with the new consoles, Biomutant, that don't have a next-generation patch, even Guardians of the Galaxy, a Game of the Year contender that just released that doesn't have a next-generation patch, and everyone is playing the game at 1080p. There's some third-party titles that really push the hardware, games like Far Cry 6 or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, or games like Resident Evil 8 Village. Those games are awesome, and I love seeing them on the next generation consoles. But there's also games like the ones I just mentioned that haven't taken advantage of the next generation consoles. There's some games like NBA 2K that crash when on the next gen consoles or on the Series S. So it's a little bit of a hit and miss with the console and the developers. Yet I promise you, most of the games coming out from the first party are stunning and take full advantage of the console. To me, that's the most important part, because I believe Xbox Game Studios should be the developers pushing this hardware and setting examples of what the tools around this console can really do. And while the games are the most important aspect of a console, there's also the new features that push the console to new heights. That's where Quick Resume and all the RDNA 2 features come into play. As for Quick Resume, I have to say at first this is a game changer, and in some ways it still is. Being able to jump from one game to another without loading it back up is freaking awesome. In fact, you can do this for up to 5 games. I love being able to jump into a single player game and enjoy my experience there. Then if a buddy jumps on Xbox and we want a Rocket League, we'll go and do that really quick with no load time. Then when it's all over, you can jump right back to the game you were just playing. It's all there and it just works. Well, for the most part. This is where the early adopter comes into play and the little annoyances that come with that. For constant online games, Quick Resume has issues like achievements not registering, or sometimes the game keeps disconnecting from the online services that is connected to the game. There's little things in there that can break the game or have it cause some issues. This has happened to me more often than not, and usually I just have to quit the game and restart it. This is something I'm sure Xbox is currently working on and they'll patch it at a later time. But for now, I do have to admit it does get annoying. But since there's an SSD powering this thing, the wait and jumping into games isn't that long at all. But there's also the RDNA 2 and the AMD features that this console promised. This is where something can shine like crazy and others not so much. The FPS boosts are awesome, and I can never go back to 30 frames on a console. I will always choose 60 FPS, and this console pulls it off every single time there's an optimized version of the game on the system. But there's one thing that a lot of games are just not bringing to the plate, which is ray tracing. This is something that a lot of developers are just not able to put on the console. They can put it on some games, but only at 30 FPS, which to me is a little annoying. Some games go all out, like Doom Eternal, and get amazing frame rates and amazing optimization. Now, I know id Tech is one of the best gaming engines in the entire industry, but it's still annoying that some games just don't put ray tracing on their consoles. And this isn't just the Series X, this is for the PlayStation 5 and the Series X consoles in general. Ray tracing is held back to the 30 FPS modes because it's so demanding. I believe this has to do with the tools in the console not being mature enough or just too new. They haven't matured and the developers haven't had enough time with the consoles to really push this new feature into them. Like I said multiple times, these consoles will need about 2.5 years of development time before we see some true next generation experiences. And I still truly believe that. I think in the next year and a half, some games will come out and push the boundaries of what is expected of these consoles. I mean, look at God of War on the PS4, Gears 5 on the Xbox One, Forza Horizon 5 on the Xbox One. All these games look insane on the next generation consoles, but also look stunning on the last generation tech. This is what will happen to these consoles in the next year or so. We'll see the games we are all expecting, massive games that push the hardware. Which brings me to my last topic, which is, was this console worth the hype? To me, of course it was. This is the best Xbox console ever made, and it's not even close. Don't get me wrong, I actually really loved my Xbox One X console, and I played it a lot, but the Series X got me to play the most games I've ever played in my life. This year since the console came out is the most gaming I've ever done, and it's not even close. I beat about 40 games this year, and already I'm not even close to being done. Most of those games were on the Series X console, and it's because of the console's 60 FPS or 120 FPS modes. Not to mention the crazy amount of games Xbox Game Pass provides me. I've loved my experience on this console, and everything about it is just easy to use. Jumping on the console takes seconds, launching a game takes seconds. Everything is just right there waiting for me to play. I feel like there's no barrier for me to jump into a game. I don't have to wait for the console to turn on or for a game to launch in 3 or 5 minutes. I just turn it on and jump right in where I left off in my game because of quick resume or because the console was sleeping and just waiting for me to pick up where I left off. But the best thing about this whole thing is that Xbox truly turned their console into a PC and connected everything together. I can play on my Series X console and then switch over to my tablet or xCloud, or I can play the same game on my PC and pick up right where I left off. It syncs the data right away and boom, I'm there playing my games and earning my Xbox achievements. It's the most connected I've ever seen a platform gaming in my life, and I love every second of it. And I know that's an Xbox Network feature, but for me, that ties directly into why I love the Series X as a console. It's because it's more than a box, it's more than a console, it's almost like a gateway to a bigger network that I love using. I feel like a lot of people will see the Series X as a catalyst into a much deeper gaming experience. Be it console, PC, or xCloud, no matter what it is, the Series X is going to be a huge reason why gamers decide to expand their options. It's done that for me, and I know it's done that for a lot of people I know that use the console. Either way, I'm glad I bought this console, and after only 1 year of using it, I know I'll continue to make this the main place to play all my games. Well, the Xbox Network will be the main place, and I have to thank the Series X console for opening me up to the Xbox ecosystem. Let's hope they improve on some things and also push games to new heights, because I'll be there every step of the way on this console, on PC, and on the Xbox Network. But let me know what you think about the console. Were you able to get one of these consoles yet? If you did, are you enjoying the console? Do you agree with some of the things I mentioned in my review? Have you been happy with your console experience? Or have you been disappointed with it? Go down below and let me know. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button and that like button to support us out the channel more than you know. And give me a follow on Twitter at Zalker87. I'm always on there talking games and sharing my latest videos. Plus, I love interacting with everyone there, so get on Twitter and let's talk about gaming. Also, follow me on Xbox Live. My gamertag is Zalker87, just like my channel name. See what games I'm playing, and let's compete in achievements for the month. So let me know what you think about the console down below, because that's what I want to talk about, is just the console and your experiences with it. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, enjoy your gaming. Later.